Welcome to this Synthetics Phonics webinar. My name is Jude Edwards and I'm here to help you learn a little bit more or embed what you already know about synthetic phonics. Just so you know who I am, as I said, my name is Jude Edwards. I am a teacher, trainer in the UK. I live in the south of England, do quite a lot of training for Pearson, and I have had a lot of experience of using synthetic phonics in my own classroom. I'm hoping to be able to speak to you today from that experience. So what is it that I would like for you to gain from this webinar? I would like for you to develop an understanding of the principles underpinning the teaching of synthetic phonics, to explore the key concepts and terminology required for the effective and systematic teaching of phonics, to look at the ways that synthetic phonics differs from other ways of teaching phonics, to understand the benefits of synthetic phonics instruction, and of course how this should be linked to the reading of real books. And then finally and briefly, we will consider how the phonics screening check might be used to assess children's synthetic phonic knowledge. So for those of you who are new to the concept of synthetic phonics as opposed to other types of phonics, let's just have a quick explore of what it actually means. Synthetic phonics is a method for teaching reading and spelling, and I'm going to stress that a lot through this webinar, that really in good synthetic phonics teaching there's a 50-50 balance almost of using phonics skills, synthetic phonics skills, to spell and to read. Many people, sometimes parents or the wider public who are not involved in education, think it's only about reading, but of course we've got skills developing here that are fundamental to spelling too. In synthetic phonics, pupils learn how to decode letters into their respective sounds. And we are going to be talking a lot today about sounds and how they are made and how they are formed and how they are recorded in print. So for synthetic phonics, students are taught how the sounds of English are represented by letters, how to blend or synthesize, hence the word synthetic, sounds to read words, and how to segment them in order to spell them. Now those two middle arrows there, those two bullet points are key, and those are terms worth getting your head around. Blending to read, segmenting to spell, and I'm going to unpack those concepts a little bit as we go through the webinar. And then of course students are taught how to blend words independently before being asked to read real books. So what is synthetic phonics? I want you just to take a few moments. I hope that you're possibly in a staff room with other teachers or other professionals. If you're not, it doesn't matter. If you're at home on your own, listen to this, that's equally fine. But if you have got somebody there with you, talk to them or with them for a few moments about the word synthetic, or consider what it means to synthesize. Just look at those in the abstract form. So perhaps you've decided that the word synthetic means man-made or put together or manufactured. If you think about a synthetic fabric, it's put together of lots of different materials, and it's basically a kind of combination of materials or a combination of concepts. And that's the underlying premise for synthetic phonics. It's a putting together of sounds or a taking apart of sounds. And of course, we'll unpack those as well as we go through the webinar. So synthetic phonics teaches students how to turn letters or marks that they might see on the page or on a whiteboard or on a chalkboard into sounds. So they're looking at something. Might be one letter, it might be two letters, it might be three letters, and they turn that into a sound, which as we know is reading. And then the converse of that is true. They would turn a sound in their head or in their mouth into a letter. They want to put that down in print. And of course, that's what we call spelling. So a really simple example, if you were working with young children in school, they would see the word mat, and if the child has been raised on synthetic phonics, he or she would know that that's simply the plus a plus t, and they would blend those sounds together to make mat. Note here that we've got 3 sounds, not 2. In synthetic phonics, we wouldn't be teaching the at as a letter combination. We would be teaching plus a plus t. Conversely, a spelling example. Supposing you had a child in your class, and this actually happened to me very recently. She came to me and she said, I want to spell the word ship. And I said, okay. Well, she couldn't write. She was 4. She wasn't yet holding a pen or a pencil, but she did have in front of her a whiteboard full of magnetic letters, the kind of letters that you handle and manipulate. So she had a tray full of letters and she wanted to spell the word ship. And I said to her, great, okay, well, what can you hear? What sounds can you hear? And she said, well, I can hear shh, because this is a student who's in a school where synthetic phonics is being taught daily. So she found an S and she found an H and she put them together to make one sound, shh. I said, great, now what can you hear? And she said, I can hear I or an I. I can hear an I because she didn't yet know her letter names. So I said, perfect, find the I and put it next to the shh, which she did. And then finally, much to my relief, she said, I can hear a p. Actually, when she first came to me, I thought she was swearing, so I was a little bit horrified and had to have this conversation in the corner of a classroom. But much to my relief, she said, yes, I can hear a p. So she found a p and put that on the end of her spelling pattern. And she's got 3 spellings now, 3 spellings of sounds, sh plus I plus p. And then she literally physically moved those magnetic letters from left to right. She blended them to spell the word ship. So she was turning the sounds that were in her head or her mouth into a written, if you like, format of what she's trying to spell. So with synthetic phonics, students need to understand the sounds made by letter combinations rather than just memorizing spellings. This is very key. And they need to learn these skills so that they can read and spell unfamiliar words by themselves. So why synthetic phonics? Why the push? The short answer is because it works. From their early days in schools, students who are working with synthetic phonics learn the sounds that the letter or group of letters represent. There we just had an example of a group of letters, shh. They learn how to blend to read and segment to spell. So those words that are in dark pink there, cerise, whatever you want to call it, those are worth learning, blending to read and segmenting to spell. From these early days in school, students start to understand how to read and write words independently, which is key, and they very quickly achieve success. Continuing on that theme, the students would master these combinations, these letter sound combinations, before attending to or worrying about meaning. The decoding comes first. Synthetic phonics, all the research has proved that it is the fastest way to get every child reading and spelling. Students experience early success and they become independent very quickly because they've got tools. They've got this wonderful new toolbox to read and write the words that they are coming across. And most importantly for me, this is at the heart of it for me, you see students really starting to enjoy reading and spelling from an early age, and enjoyment is the key there. So why synthetic phonics, and how does that compare to other types of phonic teaching? What's the balance? Is it only? Is it also and? What is good practice considered to be good practice? Well, I'm sure you're aware that there are other ways to teach reading, and usually those other ways are called analytic or analytical ways to teach phonics. And with those other ways, students might be asked to recognise words before actually learning about letter sounds. Big focus there on recognition. They might be asked to read books without actually knowing how to read all the words, which can be very frustrating. They might be asked with other ways, such as analytic, to spell words without having sufficient phonemic knowledge. They might be asked or encouraged to make guesses, to rely on pictures, or just to concentrate on initial sounds, which is quite a dangerous road to go down. So children clearly do need a repertoire of reading skills, and I am not saying that any of these other methods are wrong. Of course, I'm not saying that. What I am saying is that we are doing students a massive disservice if we omit the synthetic principle. Some teachers do encourage over-reliance on the strategies that we've just talked about, and I've seen from my 27 years in the classroom that this leads to frustration for the students and can switch them off literacy at an early age. So please, let's make sure that our students are introduced to the wonderful world of synthetic phonics, as well as to other ways of learning to read. So to reiterate what I've just said, synthetic phonics is one part of a suite of skills. I'm sure you've heard that phrase somewhere before, that students acquire when learning to read and spell. The use of synthetic phonics does not exclude the use of other reading strategies. And the teachers in the room amongst you will know that some words can't be learned by breaking them into smaller parts. Children must learn them systematically, and you may call them tricky words or irregular words or sight words. They simply have to be taught. Examples include 1, O-N-E, the number 1. That's a tricky word. That's what I call it in my classroom. 2, T-W-O is a tricky word, and so on. Mr, in its abbreviated form, is a tricky word. Looked is I looked at the photograph, is a tricky word. I'm sure you've seen looked spelt L-O-O-K-T too many times in your teaching career, and these are the type of words that cannot be taught through the phonemic principles and are considered irregular, sight or tricky words. So now for the technical bit. Forgive me if you already know this, but it's really important that we get this straight from the start and that you've got these terms at your fingertips. Phonemes and graphemes, that's really what I'm going to be talking about now until the end of this webinar. So if these are new to you, it might be worth making a note. So you hear a phoneme. If you think about the concept of a phone, obviously it goes to your ear. That little picture there in orange is supposed to be a picture of an ear. You hear a phoneme and you see a grapheme. Think about the word graphite or graph. It's a mark. So from now on, we're going to be using these terms very regularly, talking about phonemes and graphemes. We're going to be talking about turning phonemes, sounds, into graphemes, marks, and vice versa. So hopefully you've got a really firm grasp of the fact that you hear a phoneme and you see a grapheme. I want to spend a couple of minutes now looking at the pronunciation of those phonemes. And please forgive me, I'm not trying to be patronising. I'm sure you know how to sound phonemes, but it's really imperative that we get these clear and that we are consistent in the way that we say these and use these with our students. So in the slide here, you can see the 44 initial phonemes that we would teach to students in their early days in school. They become more sophisticated, the phonemes, as the students get older, but this is our starting place. And these are taught from the very first weeks, if not days, in school when the children first come to school. And there are 44 phonemes, as you can see in this chart. Certainly, I would recommend that you focus on 43 and that you don't give too much importance to the very last phoneme that you see there in the bottom right-hand corner, the schwa. And the reason that I'm asking you to almost ignore that is because it produces an sound, the kind of that you might hear in words like Canada and banana. And we are having to work really hard to make sure that when our students pronounce phonemes, they do not put an on the end of the sounds. So if you look, for example, at the first column, where you've got B and K and D, when we're teaching students to pronounce these sounds, we must teach them to pronounce them purely. We're after sounds like B, K, D. And what we're trying to avoid are sounds such as B, K, D, F. They do not have a schwa on the end. So we need to work really hard at educating the students, and certainly in my experience, many of the parents, into avoiding that schwa sound. I'm going to go through them in a minute, and I'm going to pronounce the pure version of them. And I'm then also going to put onto the presentation a link to a Pearson soundboard, which I'm hoping you'll find useful for a constant reference, something that perhaps you might like to come back to after this session and that you can use as a reference point. So let me go through them. I'm going to start in the top left-hand corner with the B and move all the way down and so forth. So we'll do the 4 columns, and then I'll just give a further explanation on the THs and the OOs. So this is what ideally the sounds should, how they should sound in your classroom when working with students. So here we go. B, K, D, F, G, H, J, L, M, N, P, R, S, V, W, Y, Z, Sh, Ch, F, N, J, A, E, I, O, A, E, I, O, U, ow, oi, ah, or, ear, year. Explanation on the THs there at the bottom of the second column. One of them is voiced and one of them is not voiced. So for example, a voiced TH would be found in words such as that and than and the. And obviously those are at the beginning of the words. A voiced TH in the middle of words, for example, would be feather, weather, other. And a voiced TH at the end of words would be found in examples such as breathe and bathe. So that's the voiced TH. And then you can see this is the reason that two are listed. You've got a voiceless TH. It's quite whispery. So for example, the voiceless TH in the beginning of words, examples include thorn and think and thunder. The voiceless TH in the middle of words, examples would include marathon, healthy, athlete. And at the end of words, a voiceless TH would be something like cloth, path, moth, and so forth. And then if you think about the two O's, the double O in the top right hand corner, you've got a short such as good, would, look, soot, and wool. And then you've got a long double O, such as that found in roof and food, pool, and zoo. I hope that makes sense. As I've said, do find a soundboard link and really make sure that you're 100% secure and happy with how those sounds are articulated before you launch into teaching them to students, and then you can encourage your students to go home and teach them to their parents if they're not doing them properly. So you may well be aware that some sounds have 2 or 3 or even 4 letters, and you may already know that these are called digraphs and trigraphs, but they are still one sound. So if we look at the word shop, you can see that shop is made up of 3 phonemes, sh plus o plus p, but it's still 3 phonemes. So my phoneme sh, sh, is a phoneme, and it has another name as well. It's got 2 names. It's a digraph because it's made up of 2 letters. Similarly, with trigraph, is made up of 3 letters. If you look at the word light, L-I-G-H-T, still 3 phonemes, ul plus I plus t. The middle phoneme happens to be made up of 3 letters and is therefore called a trigraph, but it is still a phoneme. What do you think we call a sound? What's the technical name for a sound with 4 letters? Maybe ask the person, if you're sharing this webinar, maybe ask the person around you. Yeah, it's called a quadgraph. We don't teach that. I think digraphs and trigraphs are quite enough for young children. An example might include the OUGH sound. So some of you might already be jumping ahead of me and beginning to think about split vowel digraphs. In England, this used to be called the magic E. We're not allowed to call it the magic E because it's not magic. It has a very important job to do. If you've got a pen and paper in front of you, just write these words down, please. Grip, G-R-I-P, slop, S-L-O-P, cap, C-A-P, cub, C-U-B, pet, P-E-T, and car, C-A-R. And then I want you to put an E, maybe if you've got a different colour pen, that would be even more effective, on the end of each of those, so that grip becomes gripe, slop becomes slope, cap becomes cape, cub becomes cube, pet becomes Pete, and car becomes E. What we've done there is we've created a split digraph, and a split digraph is basically 2 letters, that's why it's called a digraph, making one sound, but, and here's the big but, the sound is split, isn't it? That digraph has been split up by another letter. So for example, in grip, the new word is gripe, and the I plus the E on the end have now made the new sound I. So we've gone from an I in grip to an I in gripe. So we've still got our digraph, it's just a split one, and that has changed the sound of the word and often the meaning. One little rhyme that I like to use with the students I teach when I'm teaching about split digraphs is this one. We say, when two friends go walking, the first does the talking. In other words, when the E comes along, it makes the first vowel say its name. Think about that for a minute. So the new E makes the first vowel say its name as opposed to its sound. When two friends go walking, the first does the talking. Somehow 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 12-year-olds and 50-year-olds seem to remember that and find that helpful. So now we're going to start to look at those concepts that I talked about earlier for blending to read. And then we will move on to segmenting to spell. But first of all, blending to read, really basically, if a child sees the word sheep and the child has been in a school that's had good synthetic phonics teaching, he or she will straight away recognise that sheep is made up of 3 phonemes, sh plus e plus p, and we'll blend them together to spell the word or read the word sheep. Similarly, if a child encounters the word flight, he or she has been in a school with synthetic phonic teaching, they will know that they've got f plus l plus I plus t, and they will blend those phonemes together to read the word flight. Look at those 2 mini sentences at the bottom. What the child is doing there at a very basic level is turning marks into sounds. To put it more professionally, they are turning the graphemes that they see into phonemes. Pure phonemes are made with one movement of the mouth. So if you think about sh, your mouth does one thing. If you think about e, your mouth does one thing. Therefore, the F and the L at the beginning of flight cannot be combined into one phoneme. Fl, everybody say fl, fl. If you do that, you'll notice that your tongue or your mouth is doing 2 movements, or even 3 in some people's case. So because my tongue is having to work hard to make that sound, it is not a pure phoneme. Notice that. Just have another go at saying fl, and you will notice that your mouth has to move halfway through making the sound. So just to consolidate, sheep has 3 phonemes, sh, e, p, and flight has 4 phonemes, f, l, I, t. And some of those phonemes, or at least one of them, no, several of them are digraphs, and one of them, as you will spot, is a trigraph. So we've looked at blending for reading. Let's have a brief look at segmenting to spell. Imagine that scenario: a child wants to spell the word green and is in a good school that's teaching synthetic phonics thoroughly. So they say, okay, I want to spell the word green, and straight away they'll know it's g plus r plus e plus n, and they blend and move those letters, maybe literally or manually if they're using magnetic letters, to spell the word green. Similarly, they might want to spell the word chair. Again, a child's been in a school that's been teaching synthetic phonics and will straight away know that it's made up of ch plus air. So we've got 5 letters in this word, but actually only 2 phonemes, ch and air, a digraph plus a trigraph. Again, at the bottom, that mini sentence, what's the child doing here? hearing sounds and turning them into marks. Or to be more professional, phonemes are being turned into graphemes. Think for a moment about what would be a common mistake some teachers would make in teaching the child or helping the child to spell the word green. This is a trap also that parents fall into if they're not familiar with synthetic phonics. So if people are using analytical phonics, they may well teach the letter blend gr, G and R, as one unit. If you make that sound with your mouth, gr, you will remember that your mouth or your tongue is doing two things, and therefore it cannot be a phoneme. Let me just test your knowledge here. Br, BR, as in broom or brown, is that a phoneme or not? I hope you said it is not, because again, the mouth is doing two things. And st, as in stamp or street, ST, is that a phoneme or not? St, no, it's not. Again, the mouth is doing two things. So we would teach children ba, and we would teach them and we would teach them s and t, and those are a much more useful set of tools for the child. So when children are armed with this really useful suite of phonemes and graphemes, the knock-on effects are so powerful. There are thousands of combinations they can put together themselves in order to spell or recognise when they come to a text, and we are giving them that toolkit. Okay, let's move on now to think about alternative graphemes, because as you already know, some phonemes, some sounds are represented by alternative graphemes. And these are usually taught once the students are really secure and really confident in those initial 43 or 44 phonemes. If you consider the sound or the phoneme, there are lots of ways to spell that sound, aren't there? We can spell it with a C as in cat, with a K as in kite, with a CK as in sack, and with a CH as in school. Those are different ways to spell that sound. Could you just think for a moment about alternative graphemes for this sound, E? What you might be helpful to realise at this point is when we talk about sounds, it's very hard to distinguish whether it's a sound, whether it's a grapheme, or whether it's a phoneme. So professionally, it's good etiquette to talk about sounds and put them in these slanted lines, a bit like music bars. So you can see there on my double E, I've got slanted lines either side of it, which means this is the sound. But now I would like you to jot down as many ways as you can to spell that sound. So let me get you started. The first and obvious one to spell, the easiest way to spell the sound E is one E, as in me. There's one. See how many ways you can come up with, please, to spell the sound E. Off you go. Okay, so I hope you found that quite interesting. Don't know about you, but I came up with 7. I got E as in me, the one I gave you, EA as in bean, green bean, EE as in bee, busy bee, EY as in key, EI as in receipt, IE as in piece, piece of cake, piece of pie. Very common mistake that you will see a lot, I'm sure, in schools. EO as in people. How many times have you seen people spelt PEEPLE? So I've got EO, and then finally, bit of a trick one, I've got I, just I on its own, as in spaghetti. And we wonder why the English language is hard. So here's your next activity. I would like you to jot these words down really quickly and to work out how many phonemes there are, pure phonemes. Remember the lip tongue test? How many pure phonemes are there in each of these words? I'll get you started. The first one, dog, very easy, is 3. And those are them. I've marked them with what I call beans. If I had a phoneme, a trigraph, sorry, or a digraph, I might use a sausage underneath instead of a bean. We like beans and sausages in our classroom. So 3 for dog, how many for speed, how many for slight, and so forth. Have a go now in pairs or on your own. Okay, doesn't actually matter if you haven't finished, but I hope you're beginning to get the hang of this. So let's just go through them. 3 in dog. In speed, of course, we've got 4 s plus p plus e plus d. So I've got bean, bean, sausage, bean, and there's 4. In slight, I've got 4. In broom, 4. In school, 4. In crayon, 5. In toast, 4. In foil, 3. In letter, 4. U, e, ts, and then my favourite in which, 3. W, I, ch. So you can spot our digraphs and trigraphs there. Lovely trigraph on the end of which. I'm wondering how many of you said 3 for broom, because you possibly put the B and the R together to make one sound bruh, which of course is incorrect. And I'm wondering if anybody put 3 for school. It's very tempting, but it's incorrect. With school, we've got S plus K plus U plus L. So we've actually got 4 phonemes in school and 4 in broom. So misconceptions. Cr in crayon is not a phoneme. We would teach K plus R. Sk isn't a phoneme, as I've just pointed out. And we've got some lovely digraphs and trigraphs there, which your pupils do enjoy working with. They do have a lot of fun with those. So obviously children need more than isolated graphemes and phonemes. The whole point of synthetic phonics is to get them reading and spelling independently and get them enjoying literacy. So we would like our students to be seeing and using phonemes and graphemes in real books. And of course, there's a wide range of good decodable books on the market. And I'm sure you know what I mean by decodable. The books contain words that the children can decode because they have the phonemic knowledge. And there's a really good range on the market. I have to say, in my own classroom, I favour the Pearson's Phonic Bug books, are one distinct strand of the Bug Club scheme. So I've had a little look on your Pearson Australia website. If you have a look, you can follow the literacy links and you will find Bug Club, and within Bug Club you would find Phonics Bug books, and these books are 100% phonetically decodable, or if there are tricky words, they will have been introduced systematically in the teaching scheme. You can see in the slide here that these Phonics Bug books are available in hard copies, as in Fantastic Fish, or electronic copies. And I have to say, I do really like the electronic copies because students can click on sounds to hear how they're supposed to be pronounced. They can click on words if they get stuck and they need some help. But both versions are really useful, and I'm sure your sales rep will be able to tell you more. I'll put the website address up at the end of the webinar. So again, just follow the Bug Club link to get to Phonics Bug. So students need to be reading real books with entirely appropriate phonemes and graphemes. No guessing, no initial sound over concentration, just lots of practice at blending the phonemes they've been taught in class. This is synthetic phonics in real life, and it's very exciting. So when choosing or buying readers for your emergent readers, it's important, remember, not to encourage children to guess from the pictures or even from the storyline, not to memorize words by shape or by pattern, not to over focus on the first letter and just guess the rest. Instead, they should be sounding and blending using the toolkit that you have equipped them with. And they will very quickly, if they're reading decodable books, become confident and independent readers. I want to wrap up by talking to you a little bit from personal experience about the phonics screening check, which was introduced in England in 2012 and obviously now has been around a number of years. And I want to just talk to you from my own experience of seeing and using this. It's a light touch skills check that gives teachers information about students' ability to decode. That information about decoding, purely and only decoding, can't be gained, can it, from wider, more generic reading tests. And I know that this is something that's on the horizon in Australia. From the little bit of research that I've done, I appreciate that it could potentially take on a very similar feel to the phonics screening check used in the UK. So I just thought I would show you a couple of screenshots of the type of things that we're using. Students would be tested, and I use the term loosely, it's a very, very informal, come on, sit down, let's have a chat, have a little look at these words type of approach. They would be tested in their ability to read real words, such as the ones here, and pseudo words. And I have to say I'm quite a fan of the pseudo words. And the reason that I'm a fan is because when children look at them, they have nothing else to draw on. The pictures really aren't going to help them. There's no sentence structure, there's no syntax, there's no context. All they can do with OT and VAP and OSC and ECT is decode. And all I can assess is their ability to decode. And for me, as a teacher, this is really good news because I want to know if they can decode. I don't want to know if they can use the rest of the book to help piece something together. So this, for me, is the only test that tests decoding skills in isolation. And I think it's really helpful, and I would urge you to not be afraid of it. Of course, you will assess reading more generally and more widely, but if you want to assess phonics, this is a great way to do it. Interestingly, when this was first launched in England, we've got these league tables which are very controversial about which schools are high performing and who are the most successful schools, and it's based on lots and lots of evidence across the curriculum. But the supposedly successful schools, I have to say, struggled a little bit with the phonics screening check. And the reason was that the students in these successful schools had very good general knowledge, very good domain knowledge, were good readers, but they didn't look very carefully at the phonics, the phonemes, the graphemes in a word. So, for example, they might have been, well, they were asked to read the word strom, S-T-R-O-M, strom, as a pseudo word. And most of the students in these supposedly successful schools were not able to read that correctly. As I'm sure you can predict, they didn't say strom, they said storm, because they were trying to make sense of the word and put it in some sort of context. And those schools actually did not score as highly as some of the more aspiring and more phonic centred schools around the country. So I think it's a great opportunity to look specifically at how children are faring with their phonemes and graphemes. As a teacher, I want to know if and how they can decode. And if I give them a real book for assessment or a text, of course they will revert to employing a wider range of strategies, which is not wrong, but I want at some point to be able to isolate and assess their ability to use synthetic phonic knowledge only. And then, of course, you've got your students who will struggle for a number of different reasons, and for whom phonics, even as they move through the year groups in school, for whom phonics actually is still a problem. Older students have got gaps in their knowledge, and we need to look, don't we, at how to fill those gaps. So one of the products that I also use and I also train is called Rapid Phonics. And this is an intervention product for students with those gaps that we've just talked about. And it's designed to help them catch up with their peers. So it's intervention. It is not a whole class teaching program. It's perhaps something that be used with 4 or 5 or 6 students, maybe from across different year groups in a mixed age setting, and it basically helps to fill the gaps. The reason that I'm a fan of it as a teacher and also as a parent, I've got a dyslexic son and I've used this with him, is because some phonics schemes, certainly for older students, can feel quite babyish, patronising, and this doesn't. It's very grown up. It feels that it moves at quite a pace, and it is definitely non-patronising. If I can get it past my son, I can get it past most students. So you can see from some of the screenshots here that you've got assessments. Those are found in the teaching guide in the top left-hand screenshot there. You've got, I beg your pardon, your assessments are at the bottom left-hand, those charts to actually know where and how to place students. They might not all need to begin at the beginning. Then you've got your teaching guide, which is the top left-hand screenshot, the purple one there. You've got flashcards and photocopyable resources, which you can see in the middle. Decodable readers, because of course these students as well need to be reading from real books. So you can see an example there in the middle right, rats. You've got ebooks again, so every title that's available as a hard copy is available as an ebook. And similarly to Phonics Bug, students can click on sounds, click on words, get some online help, and then your wall charts. So on the final slide, which is coming up in a few minutes, you'll find the web address for Pearson Australia, and you can follow the links for intervention. That's the one that you would need to go down to find out about Rapid Phonics. Look for intervention. So I hope this webinar has been helpful to you. I hope that you feel that you've developed an understanding of the principles underpinning the teaching of synthetic phonics. I hope that you have felt that you've explored the key concepts and terminology required for effective and systematic teaching of phonics, to have learned or been reminded that synthetic phonics differs from other ways of teaching phonics, that you understand the benefits of synthetic phonics instruction and how this should be linked to the reading of real books, and that you've briefly considered how the phonics screening check can be used to assess children's synthetic phonic knowledge. As I've mentioned, there's more to learn and that there's more to explore, so do take a moment to check out this pearson.com.au website, follow the primary literacy links, and then for Phonics Bug, follow the link that starts with Bug Club, and for the Rapid Phonics, follow the link that starts with intervention. It's been a real pleasure to work with you today. I hope you found the webinar useful, and I look forward to working with you again in the future. Thank you for your time. Good luck. Enjoy teaching phonics, and specifically synthetic phonics. Bye for now.